All right, hello all. If you have not signed into the document, please go ahead and do so. I think everybody's signed in yet right now. Okay. Looks like Anthony's joining. Hello, Anthony.
Hey, Javier Sauce, good to see you.
Okay, we
Mike,
could get
I
started.
totally figured you were in the office.
Yeah,
You
that's
had
what.
me caught for a second.
I'm an illusionist.
The good old space. We could get started with status updates. I'll kick us off. Some of the things, it's becoming a little bit harder for me to speak to the team as a whole, since we've been working a little bit more asynchronous, and just focused on different aspects of the project as a whole. So I'll probably start leaning more towards speaking for myself and then hoping that others can speak for, on their behalf. So right now, some of the things that I've been personally focusing on is assisting with the Buildpacks registry. That's still a large epic of work that is involving Travis, who isn't here, and Supra, which is a contributor that's helping out with some of the pieces there. It still, still has a good level of work and effort that needs to be put in before it's fully functional, but it is something that's top of mind right now. Let's see. The other thing is there's a lot of moving parts with in regards to CI, and this mostly has to do with Windows. I think, I'll maybe let the Windows folks speak to this, but there's a lot of really good progress being done there to support the Windows development experience, as well as kind of setting up our CI systems to be a little bit more documented, right, and more robust. Lastly, on my part is automating the testing of the tutorials. That's something that I've been focusing on. In specifically, the trial of this is for the creating a build pack, and I'm finishing up the PR to get that in here soon. Anybody else have anything else?
I was out for a lot of past week and a half, but recently I did a bit of work trying to make the pack CLI docs a bit more discoverable. So there's 2 PRs open for that. I did. I'm trying to right now. There was a request about a bit of a while back to make the quiet mode spit out the name and SHA at the end. So I'm fixing that up right now. It's not fully quiet right now, so that took a bit of time. And on the side / on Friday, I'll probably dive back into it. I'm trying to work on a GitHub action to run pack. So hopefully I will get some more progress on that on Friday.
There's the pack orb, right? Are you aware of the build pack orb?
Yeah, so that I
Okay.
think that's just for Jenkins, right?
Circle CI.
No, Circle CI.
Circles, yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah, I think ultimately, I don't know if Jesse, you were talking about using that as reference, or if it would satisfy the same means, but ultimately, I think we want to have build packs run everywhere, right? So integrate it with as many CI/CD tools as we can.
Yep, makes sense.
I can talk about stuff I've been doing. Working mostly on CNB contributor docs for using Windows VMs. Make it easy to stand up IaaS-based VMs. So far, I've been focusing on Azure and GCP. It's pretty straightforward so far, at least what I've come up with. Just to get a full passing for pack on a Windows VM takes about 5 minutes to set up the VM from scratch. You just need a Azure account or a GCP account. So I might have y'all, and thank you, Javier, for the feedback on that. I was going to tidy it up a little bit. but if y'all want to give it a test run, it's in the issue. I can share a link around too, but if you have any needs for Windows VM, also feel free to reach out. Just one thing to be wary of, and I want to get your feedback on if you have thoughts on this, is if you leave a VM running, it'll cost you about $100 a month. Not nothing. To run spend a few hours on pack is $1 or so, wouldn't be too much, but if y'all have better ideas for making sure these things shut down. I just threw a timed shutdown as the first command you run on these things, 8 hours, but if y'all have other thoughts, I'd love to hear it.
I think that's an improvement versus what I would have thought of, which is not to think about this, and then that would have been terrible. So I appreciate the call out at minimum.
I'm still making sure it works, so I might subject to change.
Okay. I'd like to give a little bit of some insight into sort of our CI workflow for a little bit. So as a member of the .NET Build team, our main stake in CI is the WCOW runner on the Pack GitHub Actions repo. Over the past week, we were working with Nally specifically to get it revived. We were having plenty of issues with just running normal PRs. And, eventually we got it through. And, going through the docs and pairing on it, we did notice that the docs could be spruced up quite a little bit just to make it a little bit easier. So we did go ahead and do that. But in general, I think, we're just sort of cognizant that these packet workers require a little too much hands-on one-on-one time than sort of would is ideal, right? Ideally, you just set these and forget these. So that's sort of top of our mind. How can we make this more streamlined for y'all, right? Not just with docs, but like all these weird issues that keep showing up. So any ideas are welcome.
Yeah, we could definitely talk about this at more at length. I'll add that to the agenda item if anybody else wants to provide a status update, assuming, Anthony, that you're done with yours. Cool. Any other status updates? All right, going once, gone. All right, that's all you get. Okay, so yeah, I guess release planning, there really isn't anything quite yet. We do have a milestone for 0.14.0 for Pack that has a lot of stuff based on how it's trending. A lot of it is probably not going to go in, and just to kind of give the call out that as we get closer to the anticipated release date, a lot of the things that aren't completed are simply just going to drop into the next milestone. So there is no guarantee or promise that any of the items there will be actually completed for this milestone.
I see if we take a look at the 0.14.0 milestone, we've got quite a lot, especially kind of towards the mid of the listing, that are still in the discussion needed status. What sort of guardrails do we have what is the forum to have those discussions?
So I think we've brought it, or the discussions that we've had around this have been to have an escalating model where the conversations could be had in independent teams where appropriate, right? So that means within Heroku or within VMware, given that there are no, broader implications. Then from there, it would be these meetings that we have here. And then if, again, we need a broader audience, then it would be working group meetings. And then from working group meetings, the RFCs, which kind of cycle through that, if that makes sense. So that isn't documented anywhere. I feel like that might be a good call out to document that as an escalation path somewhere in maybe the contributors guide. But yeah, so if there is anything on there that you see right now immediately that you think that we should be discussing in this meeting, please feel free to bring it up. Cool. We could move on to the next topic. So now, Anthony, full focus on you, Windows Runner automation. I think we had a conversation last week about this specifically, and I think our train of thought was to at least document and provide some sort of guidance to any sort of developer, and I think that's where Micah is coming in with this wiki article about. And then once we have that, the goal was to eventually move on to something that provides a more complete automation for setting up these workers. I don't know if that's exactly what you're referring to, or if you're talking about, having to kick it every once in a while, right? So that we could look at different solutions or talk about different solutions. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I honestly have no preference. Really, just whatever is the best from a maintenance perspective, right? What I do see is that for some reason these things just flake every once in a while, and whether the containers don't have outbound internet anymore, or whether configuration has been blown away, right? So honestly, I guess I was just thinking about fixing these particular issues if we wanted to go down that route, or making it easier to. I wasn't even thinking about automating or making it easier to recreate, but if that will be easier for you all, that's also fine.
Yeah, I think for me, so what happened this last week, right, was we found an issue. I believe it had to do with networking. We tweaked the network, and then we locked ourselves out. So we had tear down that one down and start up another one. In that manual process, my hope is to not have to go through that manual process, even though it's very minimal. I would just like to say, okay, this one, for some reason, it's garbage now. Let's go ahead and throw it away, put another one in place, right? Maybe there is, the separate conversation of trying to understand the reasons why these things are flaking out, right? And I think we could also talk about those at length, given a very specific situation or problem. So if we talk about it losing network, I didn't do any, research into that. I think Anthony, you and Andrew might have. Do you have any more insight into what happened there?
Yeah, we have no idea. What's actually funny is that it's also happening on the LCOW side. It's just only when you switch it to Windows containers. So we briefly switched it to the Windows containers one on the daemon, and we were seeing the same behavior, but we switch it back to Linux. So I feel like there has to be something underlying there. But I mean, as of right now, I've only seen it once. But these sort of one-off issues keep showing up. So I mean, I don't know.
It would be interesting. I don't know if one-off would really warrant this, but if we're talking about network, and it seems like it might have happened, and maybe you were able to reproduce it with LCOW as well, if we could create an issue for it, right? And that way we could at least continue, we create an issue, address it, even if we have to do the quick fix of killing it and starting another one, right? And then if it happens again, keep adding to that documentation until the point that we see that this is a reoccurring theme in which we would probably want to address it, but at least we have some context as to what findings we have actually gathered.
That's good. I can make an issue. Just to your automation point, did you have anything in mind? Packet, I believe, is bare metal. Do you know of any, is there a Terraform provider for something like that?
I think Micah pointed us at something. Is that right? Someone has some scripts somewhere to do automation.
Oh, right, those Packer scripts.
Yes, Packer scripts.
Stefan. But Anthony originally introduced me to those two, so there might be other alternatives. Anthony's the CI whiz.
So wait, you knew the answer, you just asked it for the sake of asking?
No, well, I'm wondering what's on everyone's mind, but okay, I think there are some options, which happy to investigate further.
It'd be awesome. I think that's the holy grail, right? That's where we really want to go. But I think we wanted to take steps to get there instead of having to wait until that's done before we could provide something to the community.
Now, just to play devil's advocate, and we chatted about this separately. So GitHub Actions, the pack test should all pass on a default out-of-the-box GitHub Actions runner for Windows. What that doesn't give us is ability to drop in and debug anything that's failing. And that's a pretty crucial feature that keeps me from wanting to go all in on that. But there's probably eventually a cost trade-off value of, what does it cost us to maintain this packet worker, and what is it, what do we get in benefit from that versus just using a default automatically recreated, torn down, torn up GitHub Actions runner. We
So
could also do both.
Yeah, I thought my understanding was that we did run into a very hard limitation in regards to insecure registries. Was that not the case?
I think we still could work around it. I think we would still be doing the same thing that we're doing on the worker, but we would include it into the CI scripts of modifying the insecure registries every time we ran that thing.
I see.
I don't want to downplay that there's some work to still figure out there potentially, but if we're, want to have any parallel options that's not all packet or not all packer, that might be a third.
Yeah. I think it's definitely worth keeping on the radar because there is, to the point of having to maintain the Windows workers in a healthy state, that is totally lifted off our shoulders if we go with the GitHub provided route, which is the original, reason why we did that and the intention there. So it was unfortunate to have to move away from that based on the limitations. So I think at some point, if possible, we definitely want to move back. I think a lot of the, the guide that you're working on right now, Micah, I think is beneficial no matter what for any individual developer. Nonetheless, so I think that's valuable and a good outcome no matter what.
Right, yeah, I was thinking like if it's very easy for a dev to go and spin up their own sort of stateful VM to debug an issue, then you get a little bit of that debugging functionality that you lose by not having a long-lived machine. But I do want to go and validate that the pack test can still run on a default GitHub Actions runner. We learned a lot since we tried that Explorer too, so that still might not be true. I'll double check that in parallel.
Well, yeah, if you don't mind, we'll kind of lean on you and your team to kind of give us some guidance there.
That sounds fine.
Even so, devil's advocate, even if it does work, I guess I'm just wondering, do we want parity with LCOW, right? LCOW was already long-lived before we came out for the maintainers.
Well, the LCOW was necessary because GitHub does not provide that configuration of a runner.
Okay, understood.
Yeah. They thought about it, and then they ultimately said, no, we're not doing it. And I was like, now we got to do it ourselves.
Not to go too far down that hole too, how much do we care about LCOW, WSL2 versus WSL1, just to guide my thinking?
I have no idea. Like just thinking about this recently because I was doing support. Yeah, like everything's WSL2 now, right? Like, or should be moving.
Except for enterprise, which I think is going to be the most common one. Enterprise.
So they're going to be WSL1?
Oh, that's from what I can tell. And just knowing how Microsoft moves, they don't make big changes like that to long-term supported products because they'll be in a support mess for a long time.
So it's IE6 all over again.
It exactly is. Now, the new, if we want to set our calendars, the next LTS is 3 years, so 2022. But yeah, so we might be stuck with it for a couple of years.
Yeah, could we get more validation on that? I guess as time goes by, I know, not to get into any specific details, but we should be able to get this insight from somewhere, right?
When the versions are changing, or common versions, or that kind of stuff.
I guess when we have, like on VMware side, we should be able to have some clients and know whether or not the majority of them are WSL1 or 2.
Probably, yeah. I'm trying to think where the best source of that data is. The funny thing is that Pack and tools like it are really going to be the motivator to get people to use some of these tools, and it's a little bit of prediction. There's not a ton of people probably using WSL for Docker at all right now today, but once you know, we're riding the wave that's going to get them to want to do it. But they will still be, the part that isn't prediction is the versions of Windows that they're stuck on. We could get more hard data that shows that, you know, 90% of enterprise customers are using Windows 10 Enterprise, but I don't think it would tell us too much about WSL users. I think we would, that part of the puzzle is still, we still want to get them to start using WSL at all.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess the users I interface with are more, you know, individual developers, not so much enterprise. And the two very recent ones have both been in regards to WSL too. So, you know, from my perspective, I have a tendency to lean in that direction, just in general.
That makes total sense too. And I feel like we get an early adoption crowd who we should definitely foster, and I think should work for them for sure. They're going to be using WSL2, and Microsoft putting out any cool demos of Pack, they'll be using WSL2 as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep a pulse on that. Thanks for the shout out. All right. So it seems like a lot on y'all's plate. Let us know if we could help in any regard. We'll be on Slack.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool. All right. Anything else?
With the milestone planning, to what degree should we assume that issues are ordered in terms of like importance or how we think they should be picked up, etc.? And what degree are we like, yeah, it's kind of free for all?
Could you, I don't think I understood or heard the last part. It sounded like it was an option of two, and I want to hear the second option.
Free for all versus it's very intensely ordered.
It's definitely not ordered, right? I think one of the intentions of working in this project as a whole was to move away from any sort of ordered priorities, and milestones were the best thing that kind of fits right in the middle between saying we should have focus on this, but then at the same time say there is no order within this focus, right? So I think it's really more or less a matter of importance to the individual, but there is at least a scope versus the entire project as a whole.
And do we know what the order is? Because they don't look to be in date order. They don't look to be in issue ID order.
There should be a
Probably
sort.
order. It's probably order that it was added to the milestone.
Okay.
Oh, there's not even a sort by? Yep, I think you're right.
Yeah, there's no sort by, but you can drag and drop.
So it's kind of like intended to be prioritized, which is kind of gross.
It could be.
There is the issues view, right, where you could set the milestone to 14, and then you could kind of sort based on whatever you want to focus on. So if you want to go with like the oldest one, right, the least recently updated sorting for a very specific milestone would look something like this. I just posted it in the Slack, or sorry, in the chat. So there's still some sort of, you know, sorting that you could place on the milestone, just not within the milestone screen, unfortunately. David, does that answer your question?
That does. Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. Well, if there's nothing else, we can head out. See you all. Thank you.
See ya.